Is anybody streaming this on our channel?
I am.
Yeah.
Yo, I got a mango sapling. What's up?
Spencer, your mic works?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I'm gonna have a second computer open looking at the stream. It's 5. Is Omni here?
He'll be right back. He's literally grabbing a blanket.
I'm in a robe right
Classic
now.
Omni.
I'm sort of scared that we're gonna get like no viewers since like I announced the debate time like at 1 o'clock this morning.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You guys might get some people from PRDP because I announced it
Did you guys
in
make-
their chat. Yeah,
In your Discord, or like did you make a video?
I just made an announcement.
Okay.
I'm just one of the CAs over there, so I'm not. I don't try that hard.
We got 13 views right now, so it's not bad.
Okay. Are the rest of you like down to start now?
Get maybe like 2 minutes for OmniFlow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't try that hard.
Oops.
I mean, if I have to 1v3 y'all, I'll do it.
Okay. Dang, Panini really flaked. Okay.
It happens.
Yeah, we can get Evo to take his spot.
Hmm.
I'm just kidding. Evo.
Or I can just leave. I don't really care.
No, you could stay in here. You just need to have your mic off.
Yeah, I don't have to. Yeah, I don't have to talk or anything.
Wait, is it gonna be a 2v2?
Yeah,
Okay.
probably. Because Panini's not here. Alright, everyone else, make sure you like shut up when the debate starts.
I don't want to. Shut up.
You're cutting out, Evo.
You're lagging.
I was gonna say, was that me or was that?
Nah.
Oh, Panini's here.
Hey, Panini.
Oh,
Yo,
okay.
I forgot this has happened, dude. Holy crap. I'm sorry.
Alright, Beryl, I think you are.
Ironically, though, I know this is an excuse that they used in alternative hypothesis today, but I was actually like down Christmas lights instead of it's almost poetic. But yeah.
Your mic's really like quiet.
Yeah, you're very quiet.
Oops. How do I get out of this? Oops.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, tell them.
Bro, y'all there? Why'd you can continue the conversation.
No.
Oh, we haven't started yet.
Yeah, we're just waiting
on
for Omni.
Oh, you
Omni
haven't-
literally stepped away to grab a blanket and hasn't come back yet.
Yeah, I know.
Oh, damn. He's been gone for a while since I've looking at the chat.
Mm.
He died.
How long is getting a blanket? So let's take, I guess, account of the situation here. So on the other side, I believe, is Theist Thinker and Cap Spencer, and then is there someone else?
Barrel.
Barrel. Wait.
Bear?
Yeah. Barrel.
Bear, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, just wanted to make sure you didn't like leave since like we told you that it was gonna be a 2v2.
Yeah, don't worry, I'm here.
Omni just.
So I understand. So it's I'm debating Barrel, and then Spencer, and then Chris.
Theist Think.
Is that right?
Yes, that's
Yeah.
me.
Chris. Cool. I will apologize. I'll probably just generically refer to all of you simultaneously.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean their usernames are like on the screen, right?
I mean, that would require me to stop playing my game.
True.
Dude,
Yeah,
what is up with
probably-
people playing their games and debating us? That happened with what's his name? Trini. Yeah, he was playing like UFC and he was like, oh, if I wasn't playing my game, I would have like actually destroyed you kids.
Oh, see, that's a cop out. See, that's it. No,
Yeah, that
I
is a
typically
cop-out.
play video games when I debate because it allows me to produce just like instinctively what I'm trying to say instead of like overthinking a position.
So it's like an enhancer. Got it.
Yeah, I play video
I mean, sure.
like kind of ambiance games like Stardew Valley or like the recent one that I've been getting into is it's like a mobile game, but I have BlueStacks, so yeah, Art of Conquest or whatever.
I'm literally playing Stardew Valley right now. So
Oh damn, bro. Yeah, Stardew's pretty awesome. I'm in fall right now. Fall's pretty fun.
I'm in endgame content, and the 1.5 update is huge.
What do you get?
Bruh, I can't even like. There's a whole island full of stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna join on my computer now since it's booted up. I have a way better mic on.
If everyone's here, we can start. I don't know.
Yeah, why don't you guys?
We're just waiting
Why
for-
don't you guys go ahead and start, and
Omni's
Omni
not
will
here.
hop in. He's.
I'm gonna hop on whenever you can.
I don't want to.
Yeah.
I don't want to make it wait much longer. He'll hop in.
Alright.
Yeah, I think Chris has our opening position.
Yes, I do.
Cool.
All right. So first things I wanted to do is I wanted to clarify a couple terms. I want to define what we're talking about when we're talking about God so that we're actually on somewhat of the same page. So when I refer to God, I will be referring to the ultimate metaphysically necessary grounding of contingent reality.
Okay, I'm back.
Hello.
What's happening?
I was just
Or that's-
defining terms.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when I'm talking about God, I'm talking about the ultimate metaphysically necessary grounding of contingent reality, something that's immaterial and has the what I'm going to call attributes of omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence. So that's just kind of a general ballpark definition that we can agree on so that we can actually avoid semantics when discussing this. So going from that, I'm going to lay off the first argument, which is the Aristotelian argument from act potency. And the premises are as follows. Premise 1, change is a real feature of reality. Premise 2, change is the actualization of some potential. Premise 3, actualizations of potentials exists in reality. Premise 4, anything which has a mixture of actuality and potentiality has actuality in a derived sense. This is the causal premise. There is no self-actualization. There is no way that a potential is imparting actuality onto itself. Premise 5, there cannot be an essentially ordered infinite regress. So this means that because there is actuality occurring in a derived sense, there needs to be a first member, because otherwise each member of the series is just borrowing actuality in a way that they don't have, but from a member that doesn't exist. Because of this means that there is a first cause. If the first cause, the source of actuality, has any potentialities, then it cannot be the first cause. This loops right back around to premise 4. So finally, there is a first cause that is purely actual. We can get to a similar conclusion from arguing from composition. So from that, we can say that there are composite things in reality. Any composite thing depends on a cause responsible for the conjoining of its composite parts. If everything was a composite, then there would be no reason for the composition of composite things. So there must be something non-composite responsible for the conjoining of composite entities. This non-composite grounding similarly must not have any essence distinct from its existence, since this too is a composition. So there is a non-composite grounding of composite entities whose essence is existence. And from here, we have landed at a first cause of composite things and a purely actual grounding. The purely actual composite grounding, non-composite grounding, must be immaterial, since any physical thing necessarily has potentialities and is composite. And finally, to get some of the divine attributes out, I would add in that anything which is purely actual has the power to actualize any potentiality or bring about any possible world that could exist. This is a standard definition of omnipotence that I'll be working with. Second, because a cause must be present in its effect and pure actuality is the universal cause of being, then it follows that pure actuality is present in all things or omnipresent. Finally, again using the principle of proportionate causality, whatever is in the effect must in some way in the world, such as the form of triangularity, the form of human nature, etc. Pure actuality cannot be any particular instantiation of a form, and therefore it must contain those forms in a way that an intellect does. So we have sort of come to something which is purely actual, the metaphysically necessary grounding of being, which has the divine attributes, and this we all call God. Thank you.
Okay. Satan, you want to go ahead? And would you want to make an opening statement?
Yeah, that's fine. So, what I expect from my opponents today, this is ultimately a discussion on the basis of whether or not a God exists. We obviously need to define a lot of those parameters, and I'll certainly yield to any position ultimately our opponents want to take. Because when we discuss a god, what we're talking about is an enormous amount of baggage associated with that first claim. But I do suspect, and it's in fact the case, that they're going to make an argument from the first cause, which is just in this particular case, I believe they made the argument from actualization, which is a redone of the first cause argument, which I think came from Descartes, which came from the first mover argument, which is just a revamp of the Kalam cosmological argument. These arguments have been pitched around left and right and center, and ultimately they never seem to work out. They don't provide any evidence or proof of the existence of a deity. The reason is any sort of aspect that requires a first mover then certainly requires that first mover to be moved. They're going to basically make the claim that their being doesn't fall under the category of their initial argument, that all things need a movement to begin with. Why is that? Because it makes it very convenient for them to argue away the problem that they put themselves in. No one can speak to the existence of these beings starting or ending. We don't even have concepts of what beginnings might be when it comes to quantum physics or things that may exist beyond our universe. So the first pitch of the idea that I'm going to give to my opponents is does any sort of so I have movement here, but I know you use the word actualization, so I want to try to adopt your language as much as humanly possible. Does actualization require time, and if so, is there time outside of the universe? So that's the end of mine.
He's not.
Okay. That's me.
Okay.
By the way, sorry, I put the arguments in the channel debate too, so that's easier to work with.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. So I guess was that thrown at me, or did you guys have anything else to say on your end?
That's pretty much our opening statement.
Yeah. Okay. So your question was, does actualization require time? In the same way that I would say that composition doesn't require time, the answer would be no. Any argument that is being made using an Aristotelian proof is not time dependent like the Kalam argument is, which says that there are beginnings and temporal becoming. Both these proofs that I have used tonight work just fine whether or not we accept a B theory of time or an A theory of time, or whether or not there is certain notions of time or causality extrinsic or intrinsic to the universe. So the way that I like to kind of think about the idea of actuality and composition is that because they're in a derived sense, they're sort of simultaneous with the effect. So one way I could think of this is that my laptop at any moment is caused to exist by the composition of its constituent parts. Whether or not time didn't exist or there was no time outside the universe would really be irrelevant to asking why are the parts composed in such a way that is making the laptop actual at every moment of its existence. So really, it's important we distinguish this from an argument which is based on time at all, because it's really not. It's based on what is happening in the here and now and what is causing the actualization potential at every moment that something exists.
Okay. So, what I don't think I understand, so you're saying that if you want to separate it from the time because you're saying that it exists, but what you're referring to is strictly existence, right? You're referring to there needs to be something that actualizes itself. Can you point to something that can be actualized without time? Because we can agree that the laptop cannot exist without time.
So,
because the laptop needs to be combined, right?
yeah, there's obviously a composition of further parts that make the laptop what it is at every moment. Yeah.
Does the laptop change every moment?
No, it doesn't need to for that for the argument to work. I don't think
It doesn't. Well, I don't care if it needs to. I'm asking if it does.
Does the laptop change at every moment? I mean, it depends. It's in some ways it does, some ways it doesn't.
Well, I mean, if in some ways it does, then the answer would be yes, right? Like,
Sure. Yeah, sure.
It changes in some capacity, just not all.
Yeah.
So, can you highlight how you can determine whether or not the laptop is the same thing it was previously? Like, what makes it the laptop that it is now, and not the laptop that it was yesterday?
Okay. So, I think this is a question of whether or not there is actual persistence in an object. Is that kind of what you're getting at? Maybe like the laptop is like different than it was 2 days ago based on like, oh, the particles moving around and stuff in that?
Sure. Well, so your claim is that this laptop is actualized every moment of every day, but that actualization comes through change because it's not the same laptop that it was 3 seconds ago because the particles have shifted and moved. Yes.
Well, I think we could talk about this in sort of, if we're getting into really the metaphysics of change, then we're also kind of going along with Aristotle's view of actimpotency, and that requires us to accept that even if the underlying parts might change, the overlaying form is still the same. So my laptop is still the same laptop I've had, even if the material composition of it is different than it was yesterday.
But the definition of form is arbitrary and basically operates on your understanding. Because, for example, let's say tomorrow your laptop doesn't turn on, right? Someone who doesn't understand what a laptop is or how it functions would look at your laptop and say it's the same as it was yesterday. However, to you it would be substantially different because it doesn't turn on. So it's completely arbitrary into how you define something as active and operating, right?
I would have, I think obviously, but I'd still say that's my laptop. The broken one and the working one are still my laptop. It's just, one thing is broken in it, and I've now accepted a different, like some different aspect of it that's maybe like more of an accidental property of the laptop rather than a substantial property.
Right, and so this gets, I apologize, I can't remember names. I don't remember exactly which philosopher did this. They did it with a boat, but actually I like the way I've done this with computers. I build computers for fun, and so my computer that's sitting below me, I bought this computer, gosh, like 12 years ago, but I have literally changed out every single part in that computer since then.
Oh, is this
So-
the ship of Theseus thought experiment?
Yeah.
okay.
So at what point? So I actually have the leftover parts, and my manager at my job, her son wanted to build a computer, so I gave her the old parts to my old computer, and he built a computer out of that. So does he have my computer, or do I have my computer?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting question. I
Well,
guess
it addresses the problem with the forms. Do you understand that?
Well, I think there's okay. So you're saying like maybe our notions of forms are kind of undercut if we accept that the ship of Theseus or similar ways of wording that are kind of undercut formality and stuff like that.
Well, I think they're arbitrary and built within our understanding and design of a system, right? So, if there were something that you could, what's a good example? Clouds, right? So you look at a cloud and you say that's a cloud, and if that cloud splits in half, you say, well, there's two clouds now. It didn't double in any capacity, right? We have this arbitrary concept of these forms, and we apply those forms to things that exist within this universe. And it didn't actually create any information or any sort of shift in reality. It's just the arbitration in which we apply. I guess I don't want to say came under attack, but it became in such a way that we needed to address it, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I guess I'm just kind of wondering where this kind of ties back into the argument for God, because I mean, if we're even if we have problems, maybe like discussing how we generalize or apply things like forms and how that works with matter, I don't see how we're rejecting the notion of act and potency or essence and existence. It might just be a little less defined than we might have originally felt. But I guess I want to kind of maybe get us back to where we were and see how this might actually apply to this argument.
Well, I guess I want to highlight that this concept of forms doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. And because these forms don't make sense, in order for us to identify something, we have to identify it as a contingency of time. That's why I asked the question if time applied. We have to identify things exist within aspects of time and within generalizations, right?
Right. So I guess you're trying. I'm trying to see where your objection's coming from a little bit. So are you trying to argue that that time is really an important aspect of how we kind of understand reality, and that there's really no outside of it, maybe?
Well, that it's an important aspect of actualization. Something can't be actualized without time, because actualization is an action in and of itself. It is a metric of time.
Right. So, this is interesting. So then it might be the case then that outside of time, there really can't be anything timeless actualizing a potency, because it requires time, it requires change.
Well, exactly.
Okay.
Actualization is a metric of change.
Yeah.
It's not a metric of stagnancy, the way you propose it. Because these forms are arbitrary, we have no distinction of unique and fundamental forms.
Okay. So, this is giving me a lot to think about, and I really appreciate this. So, first, I'd like to kind of, I mean, when we're talking about time, maybe there's something a little bit that we might be on a different page about, because there's different theories of time, and there's different ways of considering time, whether we accept like an A theory or a B theory. And so for me, I accept a B theory, which means that there really is no temporal becoming, but I still accept that there's an act potency distinction, and there really is a reality of change and stuff like that. So I guess I'm struggling to see in what way, like how might we be talking about time and its relation to act potency, really, and like what's your view of time, and maybe we can kind of work on discussing that together and seeing where we can kind of come to similar or different conclusions.
Well, and I guess I don't want to get terribly bogged down, but I guess I'm not 100% sure So how this would address my objection?
Yeah, what aspect of your time necessarily doesn't agree with what Sussop and Satan is saying? Like, I feel like that'd be a great clarifying thing. Like A theory, B theory, whichever you like actually go for. Why would it disagree with what he's saying? Seems like it would work with almost all aspects of time.
Well, when an A theory establishes that there is real temporal becoming, which seems to be what you're suggesting, and that there is no temporal becoming outside of time, and because of that, there is no act potency outside of time. So therefore, all changes and all act potency really is relevant to the universe, right? Within physical reality, because that's where temporal becoming actually is. On a B theory, there is no temporal becoming anyway, and we have to kind of work with our notions of act potency within that framework anyway.
Maybe I'm not understanding. Maybe if one of my partners want to chime in here, but I'm still not certain how either of those address what my conflict with your aspect of time is.
Yeah, I did join a little bit halfway through. So suspects, if I'm correct, like the idea that their aspect of like actualizing potential, they're treating it as a stagnant, while you're treating it as like it's always through the passage of time. I'm curious how theory B that you ascribe to would disagree with that notion. Like, I don't think your explanation of what it was kind of gets rid of that.
Yeah, sorry if if I'm incorrect on this. B theory really doesn't. There's really no what we might call a traditional view of the passage of time, which is one moment preceded by another. Rather, it's just one sort of kind of stagnant block, and I think we can still hold to an act potency distinction in that. But maybe I'm getting too much into the semantics of time, and I don't want to. Maybe I shouldn't have gone that route. I think, but I think there is notions of act potency in a stagnant way. Like we can say that there's a book on my desk right now. Let's say that the book's place in this moment right now is actualized by the desk, which is actualized by the floor of the house, which is actualized by the ground of the earth, et cetera, et cetera. So that's really the kind of hierarchical series we're talking about when we're talking about the argument for act potency. There was no time necessary for this argument to be made, so I don't think it's I just don't think it's a relevant objection to it. Time is really not something considered in the argument in the way that a kalam might be.
Well, but I think it is, because in order for you to make the statement, this book is here, you're invoking a certain period of time, right? You're invoking the now, which is a specific time period that we interact with, right? If I were to say my computer was on my desk, I would be invoking a different aspect of time versus is. And so I think the invocation of time is always present. And I understand that this is the problem with it is, and this is honestly what I think the actual problem with any kind of argument of a timeless being outside of the universe. Any attempt to invoke anything requires us to invoke time in order to do so. And once we say that, well, okay, yeah, I guess I have to invoke time for that, then you can't have a timeless being. And if you can't have a timeless being, I'm not 100% sure that you can get to a deity.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. I guess I want to throw it over to one of my partners and see if they have anything that they'd like to add to this conversation, and kind of see if there's anything that they might have input on.
Spencer, do you have something to add?
Like,
We're trying to follow along right now.
are you saying that like things can't exist without like time?
I'm saying that we can't invoke any existence without first invoking time.
Wouldn't we just be invoking the present, saying that something exists right now?
Which would be a period of time.
Yeah, that'd be time.
Yeah, and in order for it to continue to exist, there would have to be some sort of sustainment for its existence.
That includes time.
Which includes time. Because you're talking about the future.
Well, I guess that would sort of depend on which theory of time you subscribe to. If you're like an A theorist, and there is no future.
So does time not exist in one of those theories?
Well, in B theory, which I believe, B theory is like eternalism. The present and future future and the past all exist equally. So essentially, it's like a static block. In an A theory, the present is like all that is, and it's sort of just like you don't move into the future. You just stay in the present the whole time.
Right. I'm not talking about movement. I'm talking about invocation. And so if there is no time, well, no, sorry, because both theories of time invoke the existence of time. They just invoke the existence of time in a different system, and I'm okay with that. I don't have any problem with that. What I can't understand is how do you invoke something actualizing or something existing or its act potency without the invocation of time? And if you cannot do that, then I don't. If you cannot do that, then how do you invoke it for a timeless being? Because timeless being wouldn't have that access to that time.
My fundamental disagreement here would be to say that saying something is or something exists would be to say, okay, X is, right? This object X is. And that doesn't necessarily refer to its existence at any point in time or if it's in time or external to time. I think it rather points to its ontological status of whether or not it has real existence or just hypothetical existence. I don't think we're really appealing to time when we speak of an existence of
what would you call something that exists for 0 seconds?
For something, so I might consider something like an abstract object, right? Like laws of logic, mathematics would be, to me, sort of abstract and not temporal objects.
Okay, so this is something I think people get wrong with, like the laws of logic. The laws of logic, laws of nature, these are categorical references. We are categorizing everything. It's much in the same way, like, we could agree that mammals exist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, if there were no mammals in the universe, would the category mammals still exist?
If there were no mammals in the universe?
Yeah.
I mean,
it would be an arbitrary category, right? It wouldn't have any real meaning. It would still exist, though.
It depends on which view of abstracts we're even taking, because that seems to be more of a nominalist stance, which is just not a stance I'm taking. A moderate realist might say that without mammals actually in existence, there is no form of a mammal or no abstract object of a mammal, but that doesn't mean that these are just human conceptions. But that's a little.
Well, it's not. It's the form of the mammal would obviously not exist, and we kind of talked about my objection to forms, but what you said is so the mammals would be simply a category that has 0 components to it. Is really what I'm highlighting, right? It has 0 things fit into this category of mammals because we already agreed that nothing exists that is a mammal. So I'm trying to understand then if you can create a category, when you talk about things that are like the laws of logic, we don't talk about the laws of non-logic. We don't talk about the laws of Satan logic, right? Because they're a subset of a category of things that simply don't exist. The laws of Satan logic include pancakes are purple on Wednesday, right? Like that is not applicable within our universe. And therefore, we would attribute that not to say that it's you can say that it doesn't exist, or you can say it exists for no time. There is no time within the universe that Satan logic exists, and that is a categorical reference to an abstract concept that has no grounding within the universe, right?
Sure, and I think. Sorry, someone else was going ahead, because I heard someone else trying to chime in.
But, like, the laws of logic
Sorry.
exist. Like, it's not like the laws of logic aren't, like, comparing, like, whatever logic you said in the laws of logic, like, since the laws of logic are, like, applicable in, like, reality.
Yes, I agree. How does that address what I said?
Because they, like, exist for time. Like, because they're actually, like, real
Yes.
things. Like,
Yes, I agree. So they exist within time, right? So therefore they are temporal. They exist for a period of time. So if you say the laws of logic are, you're saying that they exist within time. But you could say the laws of Satan logic are, but you wouldn't be in referencing to time, and therefore you would not be referencing anything that exists, right? Because they exist for 0 seconds. They do not exist. Because I made them up 4 seconds ago.
You reject abstract objects then just in general? Like, are you anomalous?
No.
Because
How did that? Wait. I just addressed that. Like, so like mammals would be an abstract object.
I get
That
what you're saying, but you would say those are dependent on the human mind in order to exist, correct?
no, I would
The
say they're
idea-
dependent on the universe for them to exist. If they don't exist within reality, they don't exist, right? I think that's. I made an appeal to the universe, but I want to say reality.
So then, I mean, what aspect of reality are we talking about? So are we talking about like is there physical reality? Is there physical reality plus immaterial reality? Is there only immaterial reality? Like that's another thing we need to kind of consider, like whether or not things like, because on your view it seems to be more materialist, which is that laws of logic and stuff like that are an emergent property of physical reality.
No, they're categorical references to reality. So
Okay.
we view the law. So when we talk about the laws of logic, we're talking about a category of events that we have placed together. Again, so this is the mammals, right? So the mammals that don't, so that if mammals don't exist within the universe, we're talking about a useless categorization, right? And it's the same principle within the laws of logic. The laws of logic are simply categorical references to things that occur and behaviors that things exhibit.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, you know, that's gonna be just a debate that I don't think is. Again, maybe again, I think I'm worried we're getting a little off track. Maybe the time thing was probably more where we wanted to be at, whether or not a timeless entity can even exist.
Sure. Okay. Can you explain to me something? How does something exist outside of time? What? So the fundamental understanding that we understand things is that time and space are uniform, like they're the same. It's time space is the way that we refer to it in cosmology. So in order for there to be no time, there can be no space either. So how does something exist without space or time?
How does something exist without space or time? So I worry that might be forcing someone to accept materialism or physicalism. Like to say.
Well, I'm not a materialist or a physicalist. I'm asking you the question. How do you, because I suspect that you believe that these things exist. I need to understand, how does something exist without space or time?
I mean, it exists. I don't see where the issue is of saying something exists without having any extension over a space or extension over time. There's
Okay.
it just exists in a way that does not have those properties of spatio or temporal extension. That might be how I would say it exists.
I thought I explained that though, where like, what do you call something that exists for 0 seconds, right?
Yeah, I mean, but again, you're saying it's as though this is what I believe, that I believe an object exists for 0 seconds or exists for or exists in no location or exists in no time. Like you're trying to make it. I think I've heard this kind of. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it seems like it's not necessarily saying he is. That's essentially what your logic is leading toward. That in order for you to believe in like a theistic mindset, you have to accept the fact that there must exist something outside of space and time.
Oh,
Yeah,
that was
and
so much better than I could phrase it. Thank you.
I guess you did.
And of course, I do accept that there are things which exist without spatio-temporal.
So
extension.
I don't think it's a crazy thing to ask how then, right?
To ask how.
So-
So what do you mean by how? I mean, just to say it does exist, right? Like you don't ask how does something exist within space and time. You would like if I ask you how does something exist within space and time.
Right. So, well, you need some aspect of specificity. So you ask, how do I exist? Well, I'm an amalgamation of cells that were brought on through the reproductive process of my parents, and we can fundamentally show the way our cells operate, the chemical reactions that occur both within our body, within our brain, within our mother's brain, within our mother's bodies, and how reproduction occurs. We can cite movement of genes and development of these aspects, and we can specifically cite the behavior of the particles and atoms within our universe. Now, I'm not saying that like you need to get down to the nitty gritty. You need to tell me like how the fuck a quark works. You know what I mean?
Right.
But can you at least tell me like how can something exist within that within your universe, within your your exoverse? Let's call it. I don't know what to call it.
I would call it I would call it sort of the grounding, I would say, of every contingent reality. So maybe the one way of looking at it would be to understand time as a progression of change, and if an entity doesn't change, then it doesn't exist in a tensed sense, right? It just is. It has ontological status without any extension over a period of space and time or any change in its being.
Okay, you're saying time, but we know time. So time is not change. Time is a dimension of space. We know
right. So I mean, I think that's looping us back into our B theory of time, which I was kind of presenting earlier. Yeah, time is a dimension. I could agree to that, but then you're also kind of saying that time is sort of just this like static block, and then I'm just trying to think of kind of.
I think even so, we could still say that time itself changes because time exists in blanks, which like exists in a form that's like somewhat granular, and the progression of time is the planks like jumping from one to another. So even that is like a change.
So that's a misunderstanding of Planck time. So Planck time is the smallest number of time that we can conceivably produce that has no metric on like what is the smallest unit of time. Time is within aspects of science. It's what's called limitedly infinite. So like the amount of time arbitrarily between 1 second and 2 seconds is infinite. Much in the way the amount of like the amount of numbers between 1 and 2 is infinite, right? It's I think it's Socrates that had the wax, and the wax has infinite shapes, right? Is it Descartes? I don't know. It's philosophy was a long time ago.
I'm pretty sure that's Socrates.
It's Socrates. Thank you.
Yeah.
So the way it's set up is Planck time is just what we do as a metric of like fundamental understanding, but it's not a metric of truth. And you'll actually see the people who invented Planck time specifically cite it as not the minimum amount of time to pass. It's the minimum amount of time that we can address as human beings.
Yeah, I mean,
time does not lead Planck to Planck. It's actually. Are you guys familiar with? Again, I can't remember philosophers. I really apologize. I'm really bad at it. But are you familiar with Achilles and the tortoise?
Yes, Zeno's paradox, right?
Zeno's paradox. Thank you. Yes. So the aspects of time, Planck time does not solve Zeno's paradox. Zeno's paradox is still a problem within our understanding of time.
Well, I could appeal to Aristotle's answer and say that the distance between those temporal points or those spatiotemporal points is a potentiality, exists in potentiality rather than exists in an actuality. But I don't really want to get into Zeno's paradox. I'm not sure what that is going to. Again, the question here is, can something exist without spatiotemporal extension? And I don't see why it can't be the case that it can. And it takes. I think it would take more to say, well, in what way can we ask how something exists, right? To say something exists is to say it has an ontological status. Whether or not that ontological status is in time and space, or it is transcends those kinds of physical ideas. Yeah.
No, that's a shifting of the burden of proof, right? Because I can say magic exists, right? And you're like, how do you show magic exists? And I'm like, well, it's not really about how we know magic exists. We're just going to take magic existing for the sake of argument. Like, no, like you need to fundamentally. If I declared that unicorns exist, you would want me to show some sort of citation towards that, right? Some sort of showing that at least it's possible for a horse to grow a horn, right? Like you would need some sort of fundamental towards that. And I just honestly, and I'm not trying to shit all over you or anything like that. Like, it feels dishonest for someone to come forward and say, well, we don't need to talk about how or why it exists.
No,
Well,
and I'm
sorry, not about why, but how it exists. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I do want to kind of. I'm not trying to shift the burden of proof in any way. I mean, because obviously I presented the argument at the beginning that I gave, like, act potency and composition, and that, because of these things, we need to appeal to something external to time, external to physical reality, and whether or not we can, with our every day we're used to things like having spatial extension, having temporal extension. We can say, well, I'm more used to this notion of something having existence in space and time, but that doesn't necessarily mean there can't be something outside of space and time. And because of these arguments, I think it means that we need to appeal to something external to space and time, because things in space and time cannot fulfill the roles necessary for something purely actual or non-composite, which is what the arguments have kind of deductively shown. So this is more of a Morean defeater that I don't think is really applicable here, because the argument has shown what we need to appeal to in order to account for something existent in reality, and saying, well, we don't know how it would exist, doesn't really, I think, address the core premises of the argument, is what I might be kind of getting at.
Okay. Are you familiar? Do you know? Are you familiar with the Greek atheist?
Which one? Epicurus?
No. It's just the story of the Greek atheist.
Oh, I have not heard this.
Okay. The lightning strikes the ground, and the Greek theist says that was Zeus that struck the ground, and the Greek atheist said, well, how do you know that happened? And the Greek theist says, well, it can't be possible for anything else to create that lightning. And the atheist says, but how do you know it was Zeus? And so at that point, the theist says, well, you don't have another explanation. It kind of feels like you're sort of appealing to ignorance, which is the typical logical fallacy when you say, well, I don't know what is possible, so we can just assume that it's possible because we don't have an explanation for the origin of the universe.
Yeah.
And that just, it feels cop-out.
Ooh, okay. So a couple things I wanted to clarify. So the atheist story you're giving me, it's the Greek atheist. So that's sort of saying, well, this is a God of the gaps argument, right? We don't know what caused X, and therefore God, and therefore we shouldn't make those kinds of appeals, because as soon as there's a scientific explanation for it, then that explanation is unnecessary. Is kind of where I'm seeing this.
More or less. Sure.
Okay. Yeah. So a few things I do want to clarify. One, this argument is not about the origins of the universe. It's about something within the current moment right now, right? Like the cause of composition in any entity, right? Which was the second argument I gave. Can't be something composite, because then we need to appeal to something else that's composite, and that's another composition that further needs explanation. What we're saying is if we deductively look at these things, we either accept that there is no reason for the composition or no reason for the actuality of things, or that something is purely actual or purely non-composite, just in virtue of the deduction of the premises, right? We're not saying I don't understand, therefore X. We're saying this deductively follows from the premises we've laid out. And whether or not we want to call it God or something like that, I mean, that's going to be a whole other semantics debate, but we can at least use this argument and understand it's deductive in nature rather than inductive and then saying, well, I don't know, therefore X.
Well, no. So the problem is because you are saying I don't know, therefore X, because you're appealing to saying that a God is the only solution to this, and the simplest answer that I can give is unknown natural phenomena, right? Because at the end of the day, the answer to every one of these questions has been an unknown natural phenomenon at the time, right? That's the whole point of Zeus's lightning, right? The cause of lightning was an unknown natural phenomenon, right?
So what? And I'm going to give my quick response, and I'll let someone else on my team go. What natural phenomena am I trying to explain? I would say that I'm referring to. Again, this is a deductive argumentation. This isn't about like, well, I don't know what caused the Big Bang, therefore we must appeal to God. This is saying
you're saying I don't know what is composite. Like within the understanding of composition, you don't know what could possibly account for this. Therefore, it must be something within, I guess, natural reality. Therefore, it must be something outside of composition.
I'll let someone else pick up on that response, and I have something else to add if you want. But if Beryl or Spencer wants to hop in and give their 2 cents, I'll let them go.
Yeah,
ahead.
and if Indian and Omni want to chime in, I know I've been hogging the spotlight. I apologize.
Yeah,
no,
same. I'm
you've
sorry
been-
about that.
It's okay. You guys have been you've been duking it out.
I've been enjoying it for sure.
Yeah, I've been enjoying it too. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Go
like,
ahead, Daryl and Spencer.
yeah, so we know that like the thing that caused the first cause has to be like purely actual, which is like omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent. So like we're not just like appealing to the God of the gap. We know it has to be a purely actual. Yeah.
Can I ask a question though?
Mhm.
How do we know that? So I was kind of rhetorical because tell me if it would be a different explanation. But the hierarchical structure would essentially prove that there has to be a first actualizer, right? Like that'd be your answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you say that, you're kind of appealing to this idea that if any of my team want to jump in, like correct me if I'm talking on my ass right now. It seems like you're making a claim based on something simply because it's the most might make the most sense at this time. Which I think when Soft-spoken Satan brought up the Greek atheist, that like the easiest solution was that Zeus did it, right? We didn't really know exactly what caused the thunder, so it had to be an already actualized being to do this, and then we can point at things like that, and then give them as the answer. But your only explanation is the logic based off of today, which doesn't necessarily mean it will always be true, right?
Disagree. I
Beryl,
think
yes,
that
Beryl, go ahead.
unless you were going to appeal to some sort of infinite regress, we would probably say that nothing can actualize, or something that has potentiality would actualize that potentiality from a previous member, and somebody would offer some sort of explanation about how something just potentially actualizes own potentiality from nothing. It doesn't seem to follow that there could be any sort of possible way that it could actualize it, unless it was something that's purely actual.
I've always
Well,
been.
wait. Did you hear that? I'm sorry. Did you hear that moment? Okay. Unless someone can present something that tells me differently, I don't see how this could be possible. That's
Exactly.
an argument from ignorance.
The idea
That's
that
an
past,
argument from
the
ignorance.
idea that past infinitum
Yeah, we got
can
there.
never exist simply because it has not been demonstrated before is just you're shifting the burden of proof.
Okay. Yeah. Let me hop in. Clarify a couple things. Note that when we go back to premise 4 of the argument and consequently premise 7, anything which is a mixture of actuality and potentiality has actuality in a derived way, right? If again, you can disagree with that premise, but that's the premise that founds the notion that there must be something purely actual. If we appeal to something that had potentialities, then we've still got something which has potentiality in a derived sense. So the only way that we're ever going to appeal to it's not a matter of, well, we could discover something which has potentiality and actuality that's going to solve this issue. We can only appeal to something which is purely actual because of premise 4 of the argument, which again you might need to reject to get around this, but then you're rejecting you're saying that a potentiality is able to self-actualize, and this premise is one founded on the law of non-contradiction, and it's a pretty sound premise, and I'd be happy to defend it if you'd like, but yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that.
Well, no. So let's be clear again. So we're not talking about whether or not something, can be solved that has both potentiality and actuality. We're saying that there could be natural phenomena that could be simply pure actualization. There could be natural phenomena that are a third category, right? Something that we don't know of. That's what we're saying. It becomes incumbent upon you to show that it is in fact the case that something cannot be, that this something has to exist, and that this something is this deity, right?
Yeah. So okay, let me kind of think about this for 1 second. So when we talk about something, if you're willing to grant that there's something, maybe you're willing to grant that there's something purely actual, but it's a natural phenomenon, I mean, then you're just calling God a natural phenomenon, because pure actuality, it sort of follows from the definition as something purely actual, that it has sort of these divine attributes. So if you're willing to grant that this is pure actuality, a route I wouldn't go down, because it kind of follows from the definition. Yeah, I think I'm worried.
Wait.
Could something exist? Could something be purely actualized but not have a mind?
So I don't think it could, because I'm gonna hop down to.
I'll propose an immaterial machine that can self-actualize. That's pure actualization, and is capable of self-actualize.
I mean, you're kind of like conceding that God exists, like.
And just calling it something different.
Well,
Yeah.
no, it doesn't have a mind.
Under
right?
your definition, it didn't, right?
Yeah, you said it has to have a mind, right?
You said it has to have a mind. That it has to be omniscient. Wait. Let me be clear. Under your definition, it is ultimate, immaterial, omnipotent, omniscient. And then wait. There was one important one
We
here.
said ultimate, metaphysical, necessary grounding of contingent reality, immaterial.
And this is none of the. This doesn't have to be really any of those things. I think, except for it needs to be. It's an immaterial machine, right? It's just a thing. It's a natural phenomena that does a thing. It can be a force. It can be anything I want it to be, right? This is where the problem is. You're pushing the burden of proof on me to show you something that disagrees with your statement, and the second I show that, now I have to like adopt this thing. I don't know the answer to this question.
No. So
this is a possible solution to this, and you have to prove that this doesn't exist. And I don't know how you could possibly.
Yeah, you have to prove it's impossible, which seems to be.
It's impossible. Well, okay. So it's a purely actual thing, right? So this is your hypothesis, something purely actual.
Yep.
And it a type of physical machine.
No, it's immaterial.
It's an immaterial machine. Okay. Yep. So what? Okay, let's consider. So we've got a machine, immaterial, purely actual.
Yep.
Following from my argument for omniscience, whatever is in the principle of proportionate causality is in the effect must in some way be the cause of that effect. Since there exists at least some mental conceptions in the world, we can say that there is something analogous to a mind in something which is purely actual. Or if we consider that...
No, you can't do that.
That's such a huge leap. How do you get that minds exist, therefore the thing that created us has a mind? That's ridiculous.
I'm appealing to the principle of proportionate causality. Not only do we experience minds in reality, and if there is a cause in the purely actual, or if there is a cause, if there is a cause in the purely actual being, it must have that in the, if it's in the effect, it must have it in the cause. And again, in some way, if we accept that there exist forms in the world, such as the form of triangularity, the form of human nature, the form of anything you want to appeal to, I mean, again, unless you're willing to go full nominalism that these things don't exist, they have to exist in some way in something actual.
Isn't the principle of formal causality, isn't that essentially saying because we can identify what God is, we can identify Christian God, it must therefore exist because nothing else could put that in our head?
No, that's not what the principle of proportionate causality is. It's whatever is in the effect must in some way be the cause of that effect.
Wait, no, because here's what the actual problem is we can create things that don't exist within ourselves. And so by the fundamental basis, it's a nonsense argument, and every philosopher considers this to be a joke. It's literally saying I have a penis, therefore whatever made me has a penis. Like, it's nonsense. I'm sorry. This is not even close to a real philosophical position. You cannot make a claim that because something exists within the creation, that it must fundamentally exist within the being.
I said it in some way.
Or in some way. No, it doesn't. Okay, in what way does my penis exist within your God? Can you explain that? Like,
in the notion of a form, right? That's what the principle of proportionate causality says. In some way, the cause must be in the effect. it's either in God in a physical sense, but because God is non-physical or pure actuality is non-physical, it must exist in that effect in some way, which is analogous to a form. But because forms are either a physical actually taking on of that form, or it's literally thinking of that form, it can't take on the form of whatever you're describing, so it must take on that form in some way that is analogous to a mind.
It doesn't, but no, it can't. It can't take on that form in some way that's analogous to a mind, because a mind is not analogous to a physical part of the body, right? That's you're literally appealing to a immaterial penis. I want you to understand that. Like, that's where we're at with this, because you cannot say that something has to exist in some analogous form to the creator. We create things. We can create machines that have nothing analogous to us. We know that for a fact. It's fundamentally wrong.
Well, okay, let's say you create a laptop, right? At least in some way, the laptop you're creating exists in your mind. The thought and the formality of that laptop exists in your mind. And I don't know if anyone else on my team has better examples or better definitions of forms and formalities. Maybe Beryl or Spencer, you want to hop in.
Is this a dualistic mindset?
It doesn't need to be. One could be an idealist and present this. The only thing we'd have to reject would be complete flat-out materialism, because we're appealing to something immaterial.
Right. And so again, you keep kind of.
Wait, wouldn't that itself rely on like the idea of consciousness not being a part of the physical world?
Yeah, it would.
And then so you're making an assumption there, right?
Well, I mean, I don't want to get into like is the mind non-physical debate, but like.
Well, the problem is we don't know.
We don't know, but what we can say is, based on the evidence that we have, that alterations to the brain impact the mind's capacity to interact. Yeah.
Correlation, causation.
Well, right. No,
we're not trying to prove it. You need to prove it to be able to substantiate your point.
You have to prove it on your side. What I'm saying is, we have a body of evidence that tells us the opposite.
Yeah. It doesn't prove anything, but it proves our cause.
Yeah, and what we're asking you is for the evidence in opposition.
Because the only way for you to claim that this laptop has an essence of unit is through the idea that consciousness doesn't exist in the physical realm.
Yeah.
No, consciousness can exist
it can, but you have to prove that it doesn't exist in the physical realm.
I'm saying it could exist in the physical realm, like.
But then how is it in the laptop then?
I'm confused. I'm not saying that consciousness is in the laptop. I'm saying the laptop, the form of that laptop, is in some way in the consciousness of someone bringing about that cause. I mean, again, this is going back to, like, Aristotle's notions of the four causes, right? Like, if we're saying, like, okay, I'm going to cause I'm going to cause X to exist, right? Like, I want to cause a laptop to exist. There needs to be in me in some way. Either I am causing the laptop to exist by taking on that form of a laptop, which is obviously absurd. I can't become a laptop to create a laptop. So I must have that idea of a laptop in some kind of way that is analogous to a mental conception of a laptop. So I'm understanding the form of the laptop to apply that to a physical object, which then takes on that formality.
You were taking on the formality. Sorry, wait.
Not formality.
You understand. You're taking on. You have a mental concept of a form within your mind. On that basis, can you not create anything by accident?
I could create anything if I have the correct method of going about it and the correct knowledge of how to make it and the understanding of what it is. Yeah.
Wait, you don't need.
You accidentally make something. That one thing that connects you and the thing created is now gone.
Yeah.
I'm confused. I don't see what that's.
So the way you were able to connect the laptop to you is through the form of the idea in your mind. The form is in your mind. The form of the laptop is in your mind, and as you create it, that is what connects the laptop and you. Say I accidentally create something without the form being in my mind. Does that now mean that thing isn't a part? Like, that just completely destroys the idea of the causality.
I don't.
If I accidentally make something, if I accidentally create something without the intention, without the form in my mind, are we connected?
So what are you accidentally creating? I mean, give me an example to kind of work with. So like you accidentally.
It doesn't. So this is the problem. Is because this is what I mean. When you push the burden of proof back onto us, we have to show you this. We're simply proposing: could something be accidentally created that doesn't have that form of the mind in it? I mean, here's a good example. My wife is quite pregnant right now. It was very intentional, but can people accidentally become pregnant?
Well, yeah, in some ways they can accidentally become pregnant. That's all I was asking, is you to give me like an example that I could kind of work off with and kind of. I'm just asking to clarify. I'm not shifting the burden of proof in any way.
Well, the whole thing is a shifting of the burden of proof. That's what I'm trying to highlight. But I'm pointing out. So so my wife and I are. It is intentional, but let's say it is an accident. I had no concept of the form of a baby in my head, and yet I created that baby. In fact, I created this baby intentionally, but I don't have the concept of its form in my head, because for all I know, it could turn out to be like a mass of cells, and my wife gives a miscarriage, right? So I would
knock down a word, my guy.
Well, no, look, I know it's a reality. But like that's an actual potential outcome, and I had no form of that mass of cells in my mind, right?
Okay, wait, but wait, this is like kind of like going away from like forms and stuff, but wouldn't like omniscient, since God is omniscient, like he would have to have some sort of like mental capacity to know something?
Well, yes, but that's the problem.
That is the problem. Because we were talking about a current demonstration of what was it, the perfect actualizer or something like that doesn't have mental fortitude, right? It doesn't have mental thought, and you were connecting it that this still exists through the idea of the principle of proportionate causality, and then we just basically explained how that was stupid.
I'm just trying to. So again, if the purely actual being is if something which is purely actual is the universal cause of being, it's necessarily causing anything that exists in the here and now to exist. So in some way, it does have that in it has that cause. The effect is in that cause in some way, right?
No, because as I just explained, I don't have the concept of the creation of the baby that is in my wife's womb right now.
No, but you are a human, right? So you are still taking on the form of a human too. So the cause is then coming from you as a human being a human.
But okay. When you talk about human being, we're talking arbitrary though, because I could argue that currently it's definitely a mass of cells. It wouldn't have any capacity of human being, and could in fact miscarriage into, just like I said, a mass of cells. It has no form. It doesn't even look human. It would only be human by the arbitrary definitions that we apply to categorizations, which is where we start with the forms, where you agreed that those categorizations are arbitrary, right?
No, I don't agree that those categorizations are arbitrary. I think there is something real. What? I really think there is a true like if there is something true about reality, it's that there are real similarities and distinctions between objects that exist.
Okay, so what makes a chair and not a table?
That it has the form of a chair.
But can you not use a chair as a table?
You can, but then you're just not using a chair you're just using a chair as a table.
Well, what if I made something in the exact same shape of a chair and I use it as a table for the use of being a table?
Yeah.
Then you're using a chair like a table.
No, I'm using a table. I created it to be a table, but it's in the form of a chair.
It looks like a chair.
Yeah, it's a table because I created it to be a table. It's just in the form of a chair.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, then you're just making a table in the shape of a chair.
Yes, in the form of a chair.
Right.
Well, no, the form isn't the shape. The form is what makes a thing to be what it is. If you're making
what makes a thing a chair?
What makes the thing a chair is that it is the. So I mean, it has four legs. It has a seat. It is used for sitting on. If you're not using it for sitting on, then
is a baby a chair? I can sit on a baby.
It has four legs.
It doesn't have a seat.
Yes, it does. The back.
Yeah.
You're calling a back a seat, though.
Yes, exactly. I'm using it as a seat.
Right. It's arbitrary. That's the point.
Yeah. Thank you for proving it with us.
Interesting. Okay. No, I see where you're coming from. I don't know if Beryl or Spencer wants to hop in and give me any feedback or anything else to add in. I've been going at this a lot, and I'm kind of tired, and I've been thinking a lot.
Yeah, I guess you could say something could either exist concretely or abstractly, correct? Or would we reject that?
What's a concretely existing thing?
Like it has like a material presence, or like exists materially.
What would exist without material?
Yeah, can we get something that exists without material?
I mean, you could say like a triangle. Or would you reject that as well?
Like the thought?
The thought, yeah. Well, let's say the form of a triangle.
Well, I reject the concept of the form
Like,
because
no,
the form is arbitrary, right?
No. I think you could. It's much more concrete with a triangle, though. Like a chair. I don't know if you could specifically make a form for a chair. You might just have to like, for material objects, it's much harder. But for something like a triangle, like you could. There are easy set out definitions of a triangle.
But wait,
like,
who
right?
decides
Like,
whether something is or isn't a triangle?
Well, it's just a triangle. It just exists.
Well,
right?
Someone has to like if I disagree, if you show me a triangle and I say that's not a triangle, that's a
octagon.
I don't want to say octagon because it's something else. That is a Satan shape.
Okay.
Satan.
The one you show, you show me a right triangle, and then you show me a what's the phrase for a triangle that has the same degrees?
Equilateral.
Equilateral. Thank you. So you show me a right triangle, and I say that's a Satan triangle, or I'd say that's a Satan shape, and then you show me an equilateral, and I say that's a triangle. And if it has a right angle, it's not a triangle; it's a Satan.
I mean, I guess you could appeal to the fact that it exists based on your mind, and you're making those definitions, correct?
Well, you're making the definition that they're the same, right?
That all triangles are the same?
You're making the definition that that those two things are triangles.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, all definitions are like so constructed.
It's completely arbitrary. That's the point. It's just something that we use for usefulness of categorization.
This was the whole map argument.
The word seems to be the word you use might be arbitrary, right? Like I could call a triangle, or I could call a triangle a book, but that doesn't mean that two people are describing, one person describing a triangle, one person describing a triangle, one's calling it a book, one's calling it a triangle. They're both not describing some similar thing, some true thing that exists that has some actual form. Whether or not we get into a discussion about what our language
it's not about language because it's about categorization. Because what you're saying, because you think that a right triangle and an equilateral triangle are both triangles, and I'm saying that one's a triangle, one isn't a triangle. I'm creating a distinction where you don't see a distinction, and that's because you're using the form of a triangle to mean something different than what I'm using the form of the triangle, and that makes the form arbitrary. This is why forms don't work. This was actually, unironically, this is philosophy 205.
Yeah, dude, I took intro to philosophy the other year, and this is what we went over.
But this is just you calling a triangle a different thing and then saying that it's not? Or am I misunderstanding where you're coming from? Because I want to.
No. So it's not what I call it. It's about what I categorize it as, and about what you categorize it as. And the category is us categorizing. You're categorizing these two shapes as being a triangle, as being synonymous with one another, and I'm categorizing them as different.
But there is, at least some similarity between these two. Like if I draw two triangles.
Wait, but what that similarity is? So I could say that all things, if it's drawn on a chalkboard, it's a triangle, but if it's drawn on paper, it's a Satan shape, right? And I could say, well, there's similarities between them. One's on a chalkboard, one's on paper. It's arbitrary. What we choose to call things and what we choose to label things, we do so because it's useful, but it is entirely arbitrary.
But what are you appealing to when you say, like, okay, well, a triangle, if you're saying a triangle on different, however it's drawn, is a different form, I think that's an incorrect definition of form. You're saying that because there's different. You're saying there's different particularities of a triangle, right? And that means that there is no such thing as triangularity as such.
Yeah,
I'm saying that doesn't follow. Just because you're discussing particularities of a triangle, and then saying that because we have particularities of a triangle, there is no true static form of a triangle from which different particularities follow. I don't think that's at all the case.
Okay, what makes a triangle to you?
A triangle would be that it has the, I guess I would say, the form of triangularity. That's three sides, and a triangle is a shape with three sides, and however else I want to describe a triangle, whatever features we want to give to it. Yeah.
Sure. Why did you decide that three sides is a triangle?
That's in the nature of a triangle, right? And
where did you get that nature?
If we want to change the language of why we're calling it,
I want to understand why you call it a triangle. Why do you consider things drawn on a chalkboard a triangle and not a triangle?
Because they're
different.
They're different, yes. But I mean, I think you're kind of making the point then that there is something at least similar between the two of them, right? Like, so that similarity, that similarity might be something more akin to an abstract form. Like the language we use to describe it is nominalistic. The descriptions we give to it, but it's taking on a different form. And again, I think we're getting
the same because they're very similar.
I didn't say that they're the same. I'm saying that a chair is a chair and a table is a table. I'm trying to get where you're going with that again.
Well, because what you talk about triangles. So you're talking about two different triangles, right? And you're saying these triangles are similar, and that's why they're both triangles. And I'm saying, well, a chair and a table are similar, so why are they not both the same thing, and why are they different?
Because one has the form of a chair and one has the form of a triangle. They're just different.
That's literally begging the question. I'm literally asking you, how do you determine this thing has a form and this thing doesn't have a form? Or a separate form and this thing doesn't have a separate form? How do you distinguish this?
Well, that's more of an issue of how we categorize rather than whether or not things actually have forms. That's a completely different issue.
It's about how we categorize. I agree it's about how we categorize, but if you can't show me the distinction of those categorizations, then how do you know everything doesn't have a singular category? And if everything has a singular category, then there is no category, right?
I mean, what singular category? I'm very confused where you're coming from. That seems to be a singular form that everything is kind of consumed by.
Everything is similar, is it not?
Yes, everything is similar.
Okay, so how do you know everything isn't? How do you know that everything isn't the same form? How do you know there are different forms?
Because it's one of those things. It's just sort of
if you say intuition, I'm going to lose it, man.
No, I'm not trying. I'm not trying to appeal to intuition here.
It's like my least favorite response. It's like, oh my god, it feels like a huge cope when people do that.
No, I'm not saying it's intuitive. What I'm saying is that even if we're appealing, saying there's only one form, that's still a form, which is a universal form, which everything is sort of.
No, if everything is one form, then there are no forms, right? If there's no distinction between, we categorize and understand things on the basis of things that they are not. We determine what is a table by determining where it leaves the floor, right?
To quote Syndrome, if everything's super, no one is super.
Right. Yeah. Syndrome was on point.
If everything is the same, then nothing is. If everything is one form, then there are no forms. Because there's no distinction.
Okay. Yeah. I think for the sake of time and brevity, I'm willing to admit right here that I am not always able to kind of answer these deeper questions about this. I'm gonna concede that I have not been able to prove the notion of omniscience. However, I will add that if we've accepted something purely actual, then that's a good sort of talking point to kind of jump off of maybe in later discussions. Like we've gotten to something purely actual and then we're just now.
So let's be clear. We haven't gotten to something purely actual. I simply propose that is an option. And so this is where this is why I highlighted that it's kind of a burden shifting. because the second we have to explain what the other solution could be, you're like, oh, well, you accepted that something could be purely actual. No, I literally said that, could this solve your problem? And if this solves your problem, then your argument doesn't, and the claim of actualization ultimately falls apart.
No, because I'm trying to get us back a little bit more on the argument itself. What I was saying was, you presented something which is purely actual, just lacks the attributes of omniscience, and I'm saying what I was trying to prove with the whole forms thing, which I don't think I did very well, and I will admit that, is that forms like something akin to a mind necessarily follows from the definition of purely actuality. But we were both kind of sort of on that point of there is something purely actual, and we're just kind of discussing whether or not it has omniscience.
Yeah, so it seemed like what was happening was you were attempting to say anything that is purely actual would therefore prove your point. It doesn't necessarily, like, anything that is purely actual has to have these aspects which makes it God, or a God. And then we were like, okay, well then, and we gave the example. Okay, here's this thing that isn't omnipotent, you know? And then it seemed like that made your point moot, but we're not even trying to defend that point. We're just giving an example to where your point is wrong.
Right. That's all we need to do. We don't need to show that.
No, I get what you're saying with that. I get what you're saying. I'm saying, like, you're trying to kind of undercut it on the notion that even if we get to something purely actual, we don't need to grant that that's God.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then I tried to get you to understand that when you appeal to the actuality, you have to appeal to those forms, and you have to appeal to time, and you can't justify either of those appeals. Mm-hmm. Or you have to appeal to timelessness.
I don't think I need to appeal to forms and time to get to something purely actual. I think I need to appeal to forms maybe to get to something like a mind, yeah. But okay. that's more, yeah. So that's more, I think, in stage 2 of my argument, where I said, okay, we've got something non-composite, something whose essence is existence, something who's purely actual, et cetera, without really getting to something like a mind. And then I tried to tease out the mind, which I don't think I did the mind part very well, and I will admit that. But maybe we could kind of step back and see if we can get to something purely actual, and then...
Sorry, the composition, I believe you had to appeal to forms.
No, I don't have to appeal to composition. I need to appeal to that there are some composite things in reality, right? That there is something that's composite. I don't need to appeal to that a form is a composite thing. I could appeal to a blob of clay as a composite.
Okay. So let's walk through the composition. There are some things composite there are some composite things in reality. I think I agree. Any composite thing depends on a cause responsible for the conjoining of those parts.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how you could prove that. I agree it's intuitive, but I'm not sure how you could prove that. Because again, appeal to natural thing that we don't know about, right?
I mean, again, that's more, I think, stage 2. What I'm saying now is that at least there is a composite thing, right? And that composite thing could not exist were its parts not conjoined in the here and now or in some way. So even if like here and now, a lamp. So for example, a lamp is a composite, right? It can only exist if the lamp has a light bulb and a lamp shade and it's whatever its support is holding it up, et cetera. That only exists insofar. Sorry.
This is the problem with your forms, though, because what you call a lamp is entirely arbitrary.
Okay, but there is still an object that we're looking at that is composite, right?
Yes. We're looking at an object that is composite.
Right. So
strings have composites.
Do strings have composites?
Yes. Sorry. When I say strings, I'm talking about string theory.
Yes. So I would say that there is metaphysical composition. And I would also, again, so first of all, I don't think
composition of string.
So I mean, I'm gonna need to look into string theory more, but
okay.
I don't know if string theory is actually a settled thing, but even if it is,
it's like
absolutely not. I'm just proposing that it's an option. Right? I'm understanding how you resolve that.
Well, strings would still have properties and extensions and things like that.
So are properties of things compositions? Because your deity has
properties of things. Omnipotent for one of them.
I would disagree that it was a property, and this gets into really, really deep metaphysics and classical theism, but we would just say that God is his own omnipotence. God is omniscience. God is these powers. He's not a composite of these things. He's
right.
He's
So I could just say, right, but I could just say that strings are these things, and they're not compositions of those things. They just are. Because if you can say that about your deity, then I can say that about my strings, right?
Yes, sir.
I don't think so, because we're not talking about similar things. These aren't like comparable things. A string is a string with properties. I wouldn't say that God is a thing with properties. God is
no. It doesn't have properties. It is those things.
Well, then
I'm just asserting that it is those things because you're allowed to assert that for your deity, right?
No, I'm not asserting anything. I'm saying that if we're talking about something that's metaphysically simple, we need to understand that it can be nothing but what it is. And if you're saying a string just is what it is and it doesn't have properties, then you've gotten to metaphysically simple being. But then again, we're just saying, okay, this is something that's metaphysically simple. This is something that's purely actual. Let's look at the divine attributes, whether or not it has these. Again, I think this is all kind of boiling down to
but
everything
that's poisoning the well, right? So if you're saying it has to have these divine attributes, you're already you're presupposing your deity before even bringing it into the game, right? And what I'm saying is, so to understand strings within string theory. And I actually think string theory might be debunked now. It's just that's what was going on when I was in college. But strings within string theory would be the fundamental basic unit of anything.
Literally
It would be what's there's like a Greek version of this where they call it it's not a util, that's utilitarians, but there's a fundamental basic quark, a fundamental basic particle that makes up all things, and that fundamental basic particle. You can claim it has properties, but at that point, I feel like I just call what your deity has properties, and you call what my fundamental basic unit has properties, and then we're done, right? Like I don't understand how my fundamental basic unit doesn't have properties and yours does.
Again, I think so. Then again, I think what it comes down to is we're granting everything up to. We're granting, okay, we have a simple being, we have something purely actual, but we're not willing to take that to, well, this is God. And again, I will admit that I have not been able to explain why the most fundamental thing is God, but I would say that we've at least agreed to, the first bits of the arguments that we've got something purely actual or purely non-composite, because you're saying strings are the purely non-composite thing, and so whatever machine you've postulated is the purely actual thing.
We're just using this purely actualized thing when there could, of course, be. I believe what we said earlier was there's what we see as the first and second. There's this other third unknown that we just simply don't know about because it's
right.
We don't
could there be a third option?
The only reason, there could be. That's it. We only gave this because it feels like you can comprehend it, but we're not saying that this is the only other option. We're saying that this is an option that disproves what you're saying.
So what? Right, but what I'm saying is you're granting that there is something simple. You're just not granting that we.
No,
we're saying that there could be something simple that beats your argument, or there could be a third option that we are not aware of.
Yeah, something's either simple or composite. There's no third option between simplicity and compositeness.
That's not a true dichotomy. So no.
Something is either composite or it is not composite. How is that? I mean,
from what we know today, it might seem like that, but
that's the law of identity. It's either something is or it is its opposite.
Yeah. No. Wait. So something is either composite or non-composite. Is not the same as saying something's composite or simple. There could be a third option between them.
I was using something as non-composite in a way that is
a great example would be you would argue something is either plus or minus, right? And that's not true. It's something is either plus or not plus, because if we look at quantum particles, they hold superpositions of being both positive and negative simultaneously in some cases, and that disproves your argument of it's either plus or minus. It's either plus or not plus. That's
okay. So then something is either. Okay, so then something is either composite or non-composite. I was using simple to kind of equate to non-composite, and I shouldn't have done that. So again, there's something either composite or non-composite, and you're agreeing that there is something non-composite by postulating strings as a non-composite thing. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're wrong. I'm saying that specifically something could be there could be something that is non-composite.
Yeah, we're making a.
And it's not necessarily simple. It could be a superposition of both.
I don't think that superpositions would work here. I don't think superpositions violate the law of non-contradiction or law of identity.
Well, no, I'm not saying it violates the laws of non-contradiction or identity. What I'm literally saying is I don't think you or I know anything close to enough about superpositions to make that claim.
Okay, sure, but then I mean,
okay, so it's possible that superposition could be an answer.
We could know nothing about a superposition that still exists today, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Our knowledge is irrelevant.
True.
I'm cautious because I'm trying to kind of establish that something is either composite or non-composite. If we're willing to grant that there's something non-composite, then that's the first part of the argument. What that thing is might be the second part of the argument that we need to get to.
So something is either composite or non-composite. Okay, that we agree on.
Yes. Okay, and then the second, maybe we'll say the second premise of the argument is either everything is composite or everything is non-composite.
No. What? No. That's nonsense.
Or sorry. Excuse me, I misworded that. Either everything is either composite, everything is either non-composite, or there is a mixture of things which are composite and non-composite. Let me try to rethink this because this is going on.
Or could everything be a superposition?
That's still a composite in some way. It's a
it is a composite, but saying it's composite isn't the whole story, right?
No, it's obviously not the whole story, but the argument is just about composition.
Right. So something could be a superposition, though. Okay, so let's pretend that this superposition of being both composite and simple exist, right?
If it's composite, it's not. Excuse me one sec. I need to pause. Would someone else be willing to hop on real quick? Sorry, no, I don't mean to pause. I literally had to.
No, you're fine.
Yeah,
I
had to
understand
answer something. Sorry.
Okay.
Yeah. Do you want me to hop on for a second?
Yeah, he's gone.
Oh, okay. Okay, so something, as Chris said, something could either be composite, non-composite, or some sort of mixture, which would be a superposition. Is that okay? So those are the three options, and
those are three of the options. There could be other options that we don't know.
Yeah, we literally just.
What would the other option be?
Well, because right now we only have like composite. Yeah, we only have composite, non-composite, so we then just go, oh, there could be a mixture, but there could even be something else that we just have no fucking clue about.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah. There could be something.
Would that just be like, I don't know. I feel like that's just almost like an appeal to ignorance.
What? No.
Actually,
no, we're not.
I'm sorry. No. Never mind. That was a poorly worded statement.
No, I'm back. Sorry. No, I'm saying that something is either composite or non-composite. Like it's one of the two, and that's what the argument rests on. I'm not. There's no middle ground between composite and non-composite. There's no semi-composite or semi-non-composite. Like those things just are they're nonsense terms. It's either or using law of identity.
Well, but so here's the thing. Premise 4 says, so there must be something non-composite responsible for the conjoining of composite entities. And what we're saying is if something held a superposition, it would be something composite but capable of conjoining composite entities.
Then it's still falling into the problem of it needs further composition. The superposition would then be something. A superposition thing wouldn't be a composite entity. So that's kind of undercutting your argument that it would need to be that it could be something.
Composite. You said if something is superposition, it's both composite and non-composite, correct?
It's something can't be superpositioned into a status of being non-composite. It would be.
It'd be super composite and simple. Sorry.
I don't think a superposition is a composite entity. It's an entity which is taking on multiple positions. It's not taking on the properties of being. It's not taking on the properties of being composite and non-composite at the same time. It's
no.
Composite entity.
What it is doing, it's a superposition entity that takes on the principles of something that is simple and composite simultaneously. Just in the same way an electron can take on both positive and negative charges simultaneously. Or it's not an electron, a superposition particle. I'm trying to think.
Then it's just composite. If it's two things.
Wait. Yes, it's composite. So, but it could have the principles of a simple thing that would then not require the non-composite. It would not require something non-composite responsible because it has the principles of a simple object and is capable of acting in a manner that simple object would be able to operate in.
I don't see how that follows. I don't see how I don't see how it is the case that it is that just because you've gotten to something which is superpositioned, that you've gotten to something which requires no further composition.
Why would something that is both? Why would something simple need further composition?
I would object to calling it simple just because it's in a super because it's in a.
Wait, why would you call it? Why would you call it both composite? Why would you call it composite if it's in a superposition of being both composite and simple?
It can't. There's no such thing as a superposition of composite and non-composite. That's not what superposition.
I didn't say. I didn't say composite, non-composite. I said composite and simple.
That's again, simplicity and compositeness are not what we're talking about when we're talking about superpositions. Superpositions are about whether or not something has an upspin or a downspin, not whether or not an entity is composite or non-composite. Composition is really irrelevant to something being in a superposition.
Right. What I'm proposing is that there would be a possible superposition of an entity of that being.
I would reject to the possibility of that on logical grounds on the fact that you can't have something composite and non-composite.
I didn't say composite, non-composite. I said composite and simple.
Then I would say the composite and simple is also a contradiction.
What logical contradiction is there? Simple is not. We agreed that something being composite and simple is not the same as something being composite and non-composite, right?
Okay, then then we can change our wording to something being composite and non-composite. Something, again, composition is something is either composite or non-composite.
Yes.
And if it's composite, it's a.
Can it be composite and simple?
I don't think so, but if I'm using the definition of simple as being composite, but I'm also saying if I don't really see what superposition composite and simple. If I'm using simple to just mean non-composite, I'm not sure what you're
it's
getting
like
at
saying,
a simple composite
can't be positive and negative simultaneously, and you're saying, well, if I use the word negative to mean not positive, well, it's not my business if you get the definitions wrong. I'm literally saying, is it possible for these superpositions to exist? And you seem to be arguing that they're distinct and separate from one another, despite logically that not being the case, and the fact that we know of particles that exist within these capacities of this level of like superposition that ultimately don't seem to make a whole lot of sense, but do in fact exist within reality. And the fact that you can't understand that is, frankly, there's an old quote that says the universe has no obligation to make sense to you.
I mean, I'm cool with the universe not making complete sense, but I don't think that it's going to violate our fundamental laws. Again, my argument could if I could easily adjust the argument to saying that there are composite and non-composite rather than composite and simple entities. It would still work. If we've gotten to something non-composite, right? It's either composite or non-composite. There is no superposition if something is non-composite and composite.
Right. No, the problem with your argument, though, is premise 4, so there must be something non-composite responsible for conjoining the composite entities. And all I'm saying is if something operates within a superposition of composite and simple, that thing would be composite by definition because it's not non-composite, because it has composite as part of its status, just like a superposition of a particle that's both positive and negative is in fact positive and would fall into, if we just categorize things as positive and not positive, it would go into the positive category, right?
Okay, I was actually so lost, and that made so much more sense. Okay.
Yeah. So it goes into the composite category, but it still has the properties of something simple sufficient to be responsible for the conjoining of composite entities.
I don't think that follows at all from discussions of superpositions. I just don't think that's.
Well, it was the idea of like I think Saucepunky did it better. He talks really fast and he's very good, and he says a lot of confusing stuff. So some of the like stuff that makes a lot of sense gets confused just because of the fact, like the idea we only had positive and negative, right? We had something can either be positive and negative at one point in time. And that was all we knew. And then, after we got further established, we got further education, we realized that something could both be positive and negative at the literal exact same time, right? Something was introduced that we didn't know before, but was just completely, it was impossible almost. Or like, when you claim something is impossible, it was impossible then to believe something could be positive and negative at the same time, but we now know that it is 100% possible, right? Did that make a little bit of sense?
Yeah, but I think that saying that I don't know if quantum mechanics has at all shown something to be positive and negative at the same time. I think quantum mechanics has shown that something might be in superpositions between or have a probability wave of being between positive and negative, but not being actually positive and negative. And again, that's going to get into our talk about what a potential is and all that. But I would object to the idea that we've got quantum mechanics and now we can throw the law of non-contradiction and the law of exclude middle out the window.
It doesn't violate non-contradiction.
Well, then
something simple and composite does not violate because simple and composite aren't direct oppositions any more than negative and positive are direct oppositions. Are you saying that something cannot be negative and positive simultaneously?
I'm saying that if we, depending on how we define negative and positive, yeah, if we define positive as positive and negative as being not positive, then it's still the case that something can't be negative.
Rethink your definition, because we literally have computers that operate on the basis of superposition of something being both positive and negative simultaneously.
But then you're just defining positive and negative differently. You're not defining positive, positive and negative as not positive.
Well, what I'm saying is that your definition is insufficient for the reality.
I don't think that's the case. If I'm saying that something can either be positive or not positive, and we're just going to call negative not positive, we still got the law of non-contradiction working just fine.
But reality shows us that we have things that exist that are both positive and negative. And so so that violates your law of non-contradiction, which means either the law of non-contradiction is violated, or your definition of positive and negative is insufficient. And so I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt that you have a bad definition, rather than just saying the law of non-contradiction is violated, right?
No, I'm kind of getting what you're saying, but not at all seeing how that follows. Beryl and Spencer, do you want to hop in? Again, I've been taking over this conversation way too long.
Spencer, do you got anything to say? And then maybe I can go.
I think. Wait, Beryl, because I was just about to say, Chris. I think, Chris. It seems like when a conversation like this, even I was having a fucking hard time following along, simply because I wasn't in it. So it might be hard for Spencer and Beryl to actually input and keep on topic.
Yeah, the essential idea that I was hearing was that something could exist in a superposition of positive and negative. Are you also saying that something could exist in a superposition
of simple and composite? Yeah. There's nothing logically.
What about? Could you, instead of saying simple, could you say, is it logically possible for something to exist as composite and non-composite at the same time?
No, because that would violate the law of non-contradiction, and if it violates the law of non-contradiction, I'm trying to be generous.
Yeah. No, I get what you're saying. So why couldn't we just modify the argument to say things either exist as composite or non-composite?
Because
actually, the argument does say that.
Yeah, the argument does say that, and the problem with that is the concept of something being. Damn it, I just watered the wrong thing, sorry. The problem with something being both composite and non-composite is you're ascribing properties. So in premise 4, you say, so there must be something non-composite responsible for the conjoining of composite entities.
Yes.
And I'm saying if this thing can be both composite and simple simultaneously, it would be capable of of having the principles necessary to be responsible for the conjoinment of composite entities while not being non-composite. I'm saying that premise 4 is fundamentally flawed on that basis.
But premise 4 doesn't say simple; it says composite or non-composite. It says it says there must be something non-composite. It doesn't say there must be something simple. So if we're gonna, get into semantics about.
Well, we're not getting into semantics. What I'm saying is, in order for you to appeal to something non-composite, your appealment was to something simple.
No, my conclusion is there is non-composite grounding, not that there is a simple grounding.
Well, okay, I apologize. You changed your grounding from the start of this discussion, which is fine.
I'm going off what the argument says. There is a non-composite.
I know. You used the word simple, and so
that might have been a misstep on my part. I'll admit.
Well, but that's what I assumed. I assumed you meant simple when you referred to non-composite, and so by that very basis, then it would be capable of addressing those principles. Okay, so can you explain to me how something that is superposition is both composite and simple isn't capable of conjoining composite entities.
I'm going to change this a little bit because if your problem is with the word simple being equated with non-composite, then sure, the argument says there must be something non-composite. If we're willing to grant that, again, we've gotten to that there is a non-composite grounding of composite entities. If you're going to call a composite entity simple, then that's fine. You're just calling something. You're just saying that we can bottom out in something composite rather than something which is non-composite. But you're saying that strings or quantum particles or whatever, those are themselves non-composite. So we've gotten to something composite rather than something non-composite.
No, so this is again the problem. I am not appealing that strings were non-composite and that they solved this problem. I was presenting an option that would possibly defeat your argument. I was not defending that those exist because, like we said, string theory is wrong. I was just presenting it as an option. What I'm asking you is to defend premise 4.
Defend premise 4. There must be something non-composite responsible for the conjoining of composite entities.
Prove it.
Premise 4 necessarily follows from premises 1 to 3. There is right. Premise 1, there are composite things. Any composite things depends on a cause responsible for conjoining of those parts. If everything was a composite, then there would be no reason for the composition of composite things. 4 follows logically from those. So we might need to kind of adjust where we're looking at it.
So I apologize. 3 is then where I disagree because 3 says if everything was composite, there'd be no reason for the composition of composite things. The superposition could be the reason.
But you're just appealing to a composite entity for the composition of composite things.
Yes. Well, I'm appealing to a composite entity because that appeal would be capable, because that entity would be capable of satisfying the need for also acting as something other than a composite entity.
But it's still a composite entity, so that's violating premise 2. So now we're going back to premise 2. If any composite thing depends on a cause, so you're really going back to denying premise 2. And yeah, Spencer, did you have anything to add? Because I saw you in the chat.
It seems like he's got a contention.
Yeah, but like I don't so like you don't agree with premise 3.
Well, I think he's right. I think he's saying that now it's I guess it's premise 2 because
that's where the disagreement is.
Yeah, so then a superposition entity would not necessarily have the cause responsible for the conjoining of those parts.
I'm very confused as to what you're saying. You're saying that a superposition is a composite entity that does not require upon further reason. It just brutally exists as a composite of these whatever superposition it's in.
I'm saying that that's a possible answer, and to be fair, you're definitely saying that your God brutally exists. So it's way less. I'm proposing something far simpler than an omniscient, omnipowerful deity. So at the very least, I've got Occam's razor on my side. So
no, I was just asking a question again because I'm not saying that there is that I didn't say we can reject brute facts. I'm saying maybe we could probably reject brute composition. That something could be a composite entity and have no reason for the conjoining of those parts.
Well, so the reason may be the superposition is what I'm saying. I didn't say anything about not having a reason. I said that the reason could be the superposition.
The superposition is just a description of the mode of being of a certain object. Let's say we got a quantum particle that's in a superposition. That you're just describing that its mode of being at this current time is that it's in a superposition.
No.
The superposition itself is not responsible for the composition.
My phone's about to die. I'm like at 1%, so if I die, just like I guess continue.
Don't die.
Don't die. That'd be bad.
Well, also, I was wondering how much longer we wanted to go on this debate.
Yeah, I was thinking about ending this at like 7. That's a bit much. There's people that want to talk to you guys too. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna turn off stream, and then we can just talk
I'm open
afterwards.
to.
Yeah.
I'm open to maybe we could get some questions in here and see
Yeah, you
where
want
we
to
are
put
now.
questions from the
Ooh,
chat?
so
Should we wrap it up and
You guys
just do
wanna
questions?
you
you guys
just want to
wanna
stop
do,
now then?
If you guys had like closings, I don't know if you guys had like closings prepared. If you guys want to do that, and then yeah, we can do questions. If you want.
I had no closing prepared. I don't know if anyone else did.
I mean, we can. I mean, a closing doesn't really necessarily need to be prepared, but we have to explain why the other side lost. That's the way the debate is.
I just want to see like where we agreed, where we disagreed. So I think in regards to the very first agreement, the one from Act Potency, I think you guys, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you guys came to an agreement that there's plausibly something that is purely actual, but you guys had the theists had trouble with the gap problem, right?
No, we didn't agree on that.
Yeah, we did.
Okay. And then the composition, it kind of went somewhat in holes in regards to that one. But yeah, so if you guys had like any last remarks, and then if anybody has questions.
Sure, I'll just say in closing that I mean I just this felt weak. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be mean.
Yeah, I can give a more somewhat aggressive. It seemed like every single time anything was brought up, either with your proof of this deity or this essential god, it always brought to a fundamental understanding of like you're making a guess simply because you don't know. And every time you tried to explain why that guess is correct, it always led to you simply just, pardon my aggressiveness, like floundering in an attempt to simply make yourself. You were arguing from a position that you would not give up. You wouldn't actually take a look at it and be like, well, maybe it is plausible that this doesn't exist, and like making a claim is kind of bad faith, and us saying that this has to be the truth is just wrong. And after we realized that, you just kept arguing for this point and kind of grounding yourself deeper and deeper, especially when it came to the forms argument, where you did concede to the idea that you don't really know necessarily how to argue for the forms, and it seemed like the forms was one of the bigger parts of why you believed an omnipotent being had to exist. And then when we dismantled it, it seemed like we kept arguing, even though that was one of your fundamental bases. If anyone has anything else to add.
No, I think that was way better summarized than what I said.
You're too nice.
Yeah, and I'll give a quick closing. I guess I would say thank you. This is actually my first debate, and I'm really kind of new to this and getting into this, but I did want to just send a quick thank you, and I really appreciate the talk, and this definitely gives me stuff to kind of read up on and study more and be able to defend this position better. So appreciate it. Thank you.
I would definitely recommend Lawrence Krauss's A Universe from Nothing. It gives a really good idea of like what nothings people tend to refer to and what something is, and kind of the juxtaposition that we kind of ran into between things like composite and non-composite. It does a really good job of kind of addressing like the logic, and I think that's where maybe I was trying to understand what you were saying, and I think maybe we got lost there.
Yeah, I think I would admit we were probably talking past each other a couple times at those points. So, but yeah, I did want to make a quick jump to the questions. I didn't know if anyone had any questions for the chat.
Yeah.
I know Evo, you said you had something.
Yeah. I'm really sorry.
Evo's server muted. Oh, I can't on the server mute him. Oh, wait, can I? Yeah, I can. Oh. Evo, did you have a question?
Yeah, I had a question. I had a question for Chris.
Evo, is there like any way you can bring the mic closer to your mouth?
Or type it.
Your mic is like.
Who server muted Panini?
I think they moved Panini for Barrel because Barrel had some.
Yeah, Barrel had background noise. It wasn't me. I was just trying to say I'm sorry for not speaking literally at all this discussion. I hideously underprepared for the debate.
I feel like this could have been a lot simpler than a 3v3.
Yeah.
Probably.
Yeah.
3v3.
I was just supposed to fill in for Spencer. I don't know what Spencer would have added to this because he's an idealist.
No, not Spencer. You're supposed to fill in for Brayden.
It's cool.
The rest of you are cool.
I just want to address real quickly because Alfred posted in the chat Lawrence Krauss and a legacy of harassment in science, which yes, there are absolutely sexual misconduct. That doesn't make anybody wrong. Like I think that sucks. Like obviously it's terrible what he does, but like whether someone does something horrible or not doesn't mean whether they're factually correct.
Yeah. No
I had a
no ad
question.
hominems here, but fuck that dude for that.
I had a
super-
question.
Yeah.
Saying I was kind of lost on your point regarding superpositions. Can you explain that a little bit? I tuned out for like a minute and then I was just lost. Like,
Sure. Okay, there. Do you know? Should I explain what a true dichotomy is? I don't want to get
a
a
true dichotomy is?
I'm gonna
I know
mute
what a
Errol.
dichotomy is.
Sorry.
Yeah. No. What a true dichotomy is, because the true dichotomy is different from a dichotomy. So a true
Go over.
dichotomy would be okay. Everyone in the world is either Batman or not Batman, right? That includes everybody in the world. That's a true dichotomy. It's
Okay.
100% true.
It's just a dichotomy that's correct.
It's a dichotomy that must be correct and incorporates all things.
Okay.
So,
Like analytically?
I guess I would say, yeah. I don't know if
Okay.
it would necessarily be specifically analytically, but yeah.
Okay.
So, anyways, there are particles. So, a particle is either positive or negative. That's not a true dichotomy, right? It's just a dichotomy.
Yeah.
So, a particle could be both positive and negative, right?
Yeah.
But within the metric of a true dichotomy, if we said something was either positive or not positive, it would fall into the categorization of positive, correct? Because it's both positive and negative, which means it is in fact positive.
Wait. So, go over that one again. One more time.
Sure. How can I? Let me maybe explain this a little bit easier. Okay.
Well, I get what you're saying.
So maybe even I could. So it's the when we compare it to, it is either composite or not composite, right? Like the original premise. When we look at that and then we say something's either positive or not negative. Yes, this thing that is both positive and negative exists in the fact that it is positive, so it's in that category. So in the premise, it would no longer be allowed to continue down that path since it is not simple. But the problem is, it is simple. It's treating the idea of being positive and not positive as solely being positive, even though the wording doesn't necessarily imply it.
Right.
So
Okay. I don't know if I would agree, but I understand what you're saying.
yeah, it's like it's simply because this thing is grouped into here, and it is not solely simple. Doesn't mean it cannot be the simple one. I don't know
I get what you're saying. So saying something there are neutrons or protons or electrons, right? Positive, negative, and neutral charges. And so saying something is not positive doesn't necessarily mean it's negative. I get what you're saying.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good example. So something could be neutral, but within a superposition, it could be both positive and negative. So if something was not negative, you would put. Or, I'm sorry, if something was negative, right? You wouldn't put a neutron in there because neutrons aren't negative, right? You wouldn't put a proton in there or you wouldn't put a proton in there because a proton is positive. You would put an electron because an electron is negative, right? If you had something that was a superposition both positive and negative, that thing would in fact be negative, right? Among other things.
So you're saying that there's in between.
we're not saying there is, but
It's not that there is an in between. It's
That it's logically possible.
That
Yes.
it's logically possible because it's not a true dichotomy.
yes.
Okay.
Here's my question then for the true dichotomy.
Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Could something be? Is it logically possible for something to be both
Any
true
other
and
questions,
false?
Yes.
Or,
Yes.
yes. Okay. I get what you're saying then. So that would be a
so,
just
like-
normal dichotomy.
Who's asking the next one?
Yeah, that one's a hard one. I took this in philosophy. There's a statement that is both true and false. I need to Google this. But yes, it's
I think
absolutely
there's
possible.
things that can be neither true nor false if the concept doesn't apply. I don't know if I would say that if the concept does apply, that falsification does apply, that something can necessarily be both true and false. I don't know about that one, but
So there's true contradictions. I forget what it's. There's like a couple of statements that can be both true and false simultaneously. And
Wait, couldn't this be applied to like wave functions to an extent, right? Because like say you ask the question, is this positive, and you look at it through a glass and it's positive, but you also understand that it's both positive and negative, and you look through a glass again and it's negative, right? It has the functions of being both positive and negative, but at the simple moment it is true, and then at another time you look at it, nothing has changed except it is negative, so it's both true and false. Could that be?
Like so like with wave functions, right? The wave function merely represents like our knowledge of the system. So like in regards to that much, it's not necessarily like, I mean, I guess it kind of depends on your interpretation of quantum mechanics. Like for example,
It's
Schrodinger's
actually not our knowledge. It's the probability of that function.
Well,
but actually,
yeah,
sorry.
it depends on the
This sentence
interpretation,
is
right?
true. Is both a true and false statement simultaneously.
Okay. So like
That's
I mean, like in some interpretations, like in terms of like Schrodinger's cat, right? Like in some interpretations, it is literally the case that like the cat is both dead and alive. I don't think most interpretations are like that. Personally, I mean, like I view it as
more
just like
for our conceptualization. That's really not like it's
well,
just,
no,
it's
like
for-
some interpretations do actually hold that. I think that's kind of whack, but yeah, I get what you're saying. Thank you.
Yeah. So the statement this sentence is true is both simultaneously true and false at the same time. That's a really easy example. I can't believe I didn't remember
The sentence is true is both simultaneously true and false.
Yes.
Wait.
What? I think you mean. Wait, this sentence is. How is that false? If it's true.
This statement is false. Yeah, it would be this.
If the sentence is not true.
Okay. So wait. Okay, I get it. Wait. If it's not true, it's false.
Yeah. So it's
Okay,
both
yeah.
true and false simultaneously, and there's no because what's important is it has nothing to do with perspective and categorization. A statement is true. That statement is both true and false, regardless of your position. Because if the statement is false, it's false, and if the statement is true, it's true. And it's just
I wanted to. Sorry, if I can interrupt real quick. Evo had a question. He hasn't gotten around to it. I just wanted to ask him what he wanted to ask me specifically.
Sorry.
Oh, you're okay. As soon as he hops in and types it out.
Who's edging the rainbow flag, bro? Come on.
I think Evo just left.
That's whack.
It is whack.
Hello? Hello?
That Eva?
Hey, Evo.
Yeah.
Yeah, type.
Your mic is not.
I wanted to get back to the first objection that they kind of made against the argument about like how it makes no sense for like something to actualize without the presupposition of time. Like if it never was, never is, or never will be, how does it exist? Like how do you properly address it? Like how can you address the existence of something without the time or temporality?
Because I think.
some of those objections, right?
Yeah, I think that makes the mistake of saying that in order for anything to have existence, it must have existence in time. And that's, I don't think I need to affirm that that is a true thing. I can just affirm that something exists if it has ontological status, true ontological status, without saying it has existence because it exists within a temporal sense. It has no temporal extension, but it still has existence.
That feels like begging the question, though.
Will be. Like that's what I'm. Like if it never was, never is, or never will be, then it isn't.
I see. I think.
So
I-
related to reality that you can't say, oh well, it just exists because I say so.
No, I'm not saying it exists because I say so. Again, the point of the argument is to say it exists. The question of whether or not it exists in a temporal sense is kind of more a question of, okay, we've shown that this thing exists deductively, whether or not you think that works. Obviously, my opponents will not think that that works as an argument, but for the sake of the argument, let's say that I'm talking to someone and they grant that there is something purely actual, and I say, well, it's timeless, and their argument is, well, this doesn't make sense, therefore this thing doesn't exist. So we've gotten to so when we use the argument, we get to the ontological status of whether or not it exists or not. The question is whether or not it is coherent to speak of something existing timelessly. And I think that I know I was accused of question begging a little bit there, but I think actually it's the reverse to say that it's begging. I think it's begging the question to say if something doesn't exist in time, that it doesn't exist at all. And I think that's just affirming already that something needs to have a temporal status in order to exist. But I don't think that that's the case, and I don't have to accept that because I haven't heard an argument in favor of saying that something needs to have a temporal extension in order to exist.
That's the burden shift right there. You're saying, no. Let me explain. What you're saying is, I cannot, or a timeless being. There's no evidence that this can't exist. Therefore, it must be possible. And what we're saying is, why do you think that this is possible? And that's what I don't. And that's what I'm asking you to explain.
No, I'm sorry. What Evo is saying is that it is impossible that something can exist without temporal extension.
Yeah,
and I'm saying that requires further justification. I think that the argument is enough to say that something exists timelessly, and whether or not that's the case, that's a whole other debate. I'm shifting the burden because his argument is that it's impossible for something to exist timelessly, and I'm saying that requires further.
That's a good shift of the burden.
Yes, that is an appropriate shift at that point.
And I think that's what I was trying to do earlier, and I just did not explain that well enough, probably.
And I would argue that might be, and I apologize, I can't hear shit of what Evo said, but Evo, that would be where I think you maybe stepped too far. You can't demand that they show this. But what they're already doing is they're already making the assertion that this is a possible outcome. So all you need to do is ask them to justify that outcome. Because unless they're able to justify that outcome, which I don't think anyone can.
Hello? The very concept of actualization requires priorness. Like it just doesn't. It's like
that would imply that something has actually undergone the process of being actualized, right? If you posit that thing is just actual, it never underwent a process of actualization, then you avoid that problem.
Well, it sort of feels like you're appealing to the brute facts again, though.
Well, no, this would obviously be justified via argumentation, but like I'm just saying, if that is like the position that you take in regards to what God is, something that is just actual, something that underwent no actualization, then, well, that sort of argument that you need something prior for something to be actualized, well, it's not being actualized; it's just actual. But also, like, I feel like that, like, in the justification, I'm not taking a particular stance, but like, I think in the
needs to be actualized, like that's the first premise.
Well, I mean, you can definitely hold that position, right? Especially if you avoid something being purely actual. Then you would.
Was that actually the first premise, though?
It's like like saying, well, everything that like.
Oh no! Well, the first the first premise is that all like change is the actualization of potential. So if you say that something is incapable of change, well, it's inherently incapable of actualizing any potential, thus undergoes no actualization.
I see.
So when I think of actualization of potential, I think that there's a potential state, and then that state gets rearranged into something else, and then that something else is what is actualized, correct?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if something is being actualized, you're right. Yeah.
That exists is an actualization.
No. So, see that's where you're wrong, right? The argument merely says that change is the actualization of potential. And so if something doesn't undergo any changes, it never undergoes an actualization of potential. It doesn't say everything that exists undergoes an actualization of potential, because otherwise you'd be right. Like, it's like Kalam's, right? If you're saying everything that exists must have a cause, well then you can ask, what cause does God have, right? But instead, you're positing everything that begins to exist has a cause. And so if you say that something doesn't begin to exist, well, that it has no cause. And this is also where objections come in, just like, for example, the B theory of time.
But then again, you have the problem of proving that that's God.
Well, oh yeah, that's the gap problem.
Well, yeah, that was the gap. That was the gap that they ran into for sure.
Yeah. I'm not saying that they succeed or anything. I'm just answering your question, right? It's just that you don't necessarily need some sort of notion of something being prior in order to say that something is actual. You do need. I would say that you do need something being prior to say that something actualized, because that implies that there was a state in which something wasn't actual.
I think you need something prior for something